Hey guys, Dr. Ben here, Functional Medicine Centers. Welcome. So excited to have you here on this beautiful day. Going to talk about some really exciting things: insulin resistance, diabetes, how it affects viruses, metabolic flexibility. This is one of the biggest things that we have to do to our bodies to get perfect health, to get this ideal health, to reverse the chronic conditions that are happening in this world. So, all right, welcome. If you guys are new to our videos, go ahead and like or follow this page. We come out with many videos a week, tons of information. Check out our other videos on Facebook, and you educate yourself. Tons of good information on there. Share this with anybody that you know that is worried about COVID, worried about viruses, worried about infections, worried about diabetes, worried about their health at all. Go ahead and get this information out there by hitting that little share button down below. Give us some thumbs up, give us some feedback, and we'd love to know where you guys are watching in from. So go ahead and put that down below. We get Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Ohio, Maryland, Texas, all over the place. Love hearing from everybody. So here's the deal. I'm going to be talking. Go ahead and put some questions in. I will be jumping back as I take some breaks in the action and answering those questions. So go ahead, anything at all. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about metabolic flexibility, insulin resistance, how it relates to these viruses and the immune system and the problems that we're having in this country. So go ahead and put questions down below. Like or follow our page and share this with anybody that you know it's out there. Go ahead and let people know that you're watching. We love to get more information out there. All right, so what does this mean, metabolic flexibility, or to be metabolically flexible? Well, it means that you can handle a lot of different states of insulin, glucose, food, different things coming into your body. And this is huge for us being able to manage all the stressors out there. And that's going to be physical stress, immune stress, not getting a good night's sleep, all types of different things. Your body needs to be able to handle this. There's a lot of ways that people try to become metabolically flexible. They look at ketosis, they look at paleo diet, they look at a plant-based vegan diet, vegetarian, all these different things. And yet getting your body to have consistent glucose and consistent insulin is the key to becoming metabolically flexible. So what does that look like? Well, one of the things for my patients that we do is we start checking their blood sugar and we start monitoring. So get this. Insulin resistance, you guys have probably heard this term all the time. One of the number one risk factors for people getting serious infection or even dying from COVID is insulin resistance. And we know that this leads into diabetes, it leads into Alzheimer's, all these different things that come down the pike as people are having these experiences of blood sugar dysregulation. So insulin is a hormone that grabs a hold of glucose, takes it over to the cell takes glucose in and makes energy. So this is where we have to have this consistent stream of energy coming from that glucose, unless somebody is in ketosis and then they're using ketones. We'll get into that in a little bit. So here we go. Hey Paul, good to see you. So here we go. Insulin resistance is when that insulin grabs glucose goes up, you eat something, a bagel, cereal, an apple, anything that's going to turn into sugar or into glucose, that blood sugar goes up, insulin grabs a hold of it, takes it over to the cell. But in insulin resistance, because of years and years of poor diet, standard American diet, they call it SAD, which is kind of ironic there, standard American diet, we've got this yo-yo going on, this high blood sugar and insulin, and then it crashes down, and then we need more again, and it's up and down, and eventually the keyhole that the insulin goes into in that cell and tries to unlock it, that keyhole doesn't respond, and so then the body has to kick out more insulin. Glucose in elevation is very damaging to our blood vessel linings. It's very damaging to nerves. That's why people get diabetic neuropathy. They can't feel their legs anymore, their hands, feet anymore, any of those different things. things. And so insulin resistance is when that keyhole gets gummed up, it's not responding to the insulin, and then glucose goes up in the bloodstream. What does that do? Well, not only does it create inflammation, create all these problems, but it's going to cause us to have less energy, because the whole point of getting glucose into the cells is for Krebs cycle. That's, if anybody remembers back to their physiology, Krebs cycle is going to cause that glucose to be turned into ATP. ATP is our energy source. So ATP is going to give us energy, be able to go and run and think and do and be. And if we're not using that glucose that's high, not getting into the cell, not making ATP, you are going to be more tired. Your brain's not going to work as well. Your muscles aren't going to work as well. You're not going to be able to function at your optimal level. So what do we have to do? Well, we've got to get that blood sugar and that insulin stabilized in there. So what does that look like? Well, for some people, it's going to take time because they've had years of damage to get to this point. But the good news is, even for people that are full-blown diabetic, we can get them free of diabetes in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. So metabolic flexibility means that you can handle a poor eating meal, you can handle a pizza or something like that, but then bring your blood sugar back into balance, because day in and day out your body is doing as well as possible. What does this have to do with the immune system? What does this have to do with COVID? For many, many people that have died with COVID, and the CDC said that 94% of the people in the United States died with other conditions, all types of different things, but most of them are related to insulin resistance, related to diabetes, there's heart attacks, all these different things, and we know that those are caused from this insulin resistance, caused from this glucose imbalance. And so many of the deaths that were attributed to with COVID, the average person that died with COVID had 2.6 other fatality markers, whether that was heart disease, heart attack, cancer, diabetes, COPD, any of these things. The average person had 2.6 other conditions in addition to COVID on their death certificate. But the number one risk factor for COVID and for that immune system to not work as well as it should is insulin resistance. It is diabetes. And so what does that mean? Well, that tells us, the research shows 80% of the population in this country are insulin resistant. And so it's a huge number. And one of the big reasons why we have the number of deaths that we do compared to almost every other country out there. It's amazing how many other countries have had these spikes and have had these infections and all these things, and yet our fatality ratio is higher than everybody else out there. Why is that? Well, because of the underlying sickness status of our country. And that's the thing. We knew the effect that this metabolic unflexibility had going into this pandemic. And what happened was that we didn't do anything for the people in the assisted living homes. We kept giving them orange juice and bagels and waffles and syrup and all these different things, and contributed to their inflammatory process. So when this virus or the flu virus or anything else hits them, it's going to be a lot worse off. And some people say, oh, well, you know what, if they would have lived longer if they wouldn't have had this virus into their body. And I say, well, you know what, they would have lived a lot longer if they would not have had that metabolic inflexibility, that insulin resistance, diabetes, whatever it was, and come in contact with this virus. When you look at the number of people under 40 and their fatality ratio, it's 0.1%. I mean, this is very, very, very low. And so that the big reason why is that many of those people do not have insulin resistance. Many of them do not have diabetes. They haven't had these years of inflammatory process into them. So the older somebody gets and the worse they've done eating wise, it gets worse and worse and worse going down that path. Okay, so insulin resistance is where that insulin grabs a hold of glucose, takes it over to the cell, cannot unlock the cell, so we're not making energy down the pathway, and then what happens? Well, people get lower energy, their brain's not functioning as well as it should, they get a lot of other issues that are coming about. So What do we need to do, and how does this actually change? Well, one of the things that you can do is to start tracking your blood sugar, seeing when that blood sugar goes up and when it goes down, because every meal that you have, every food that you eat that makes that blood sugar go up too high, our good range is 85 to 110 for those of you that have been with me for a long time or have read my book, Blood Sugar Doesn't Lie, you can get it on Amazon, that when that blood sugar goes up too high, goes up over 110, we kick out more insulin, we create this inflammatory process, we irritate those receptors in the cell, and we're not able to get glucose into the cell. We're not able to get the energy production going on there. So again, any of those just jumping on, go ahead and put down below where you guys are watching from. Love to see that. Like or follow the page. Go ahead and share it with anybody. I'm going to scroll back up through here. Wow, we got a lot of people watching on there. Let me see if there were any questions. And Michelle, good to see you. Yeah, not seeing any other questions on there. So if you guys have questions at all about immune system, about viruses, about blood sugar, anything like that, go ahead and put those down below and I'll be answering those as we go along. Okay, so insulin resistant. 80% of the U.S. population is insulin resistant. 70% of the U.S. population is overweight or obese. 60% is pre-diabetic or diabetic. Let that sink in for a little bit. I mean, that's huge numbers that are going to have effects way past this COVID pandemic, all these different things. We're going to have people for years and years and years having issues until we can reverse this insulin resistance, until we can give people more metabolic flexibility. One of the ways that you can create metabolic flexibility is to go into ketosis. So ketosis, some people love it, other people are like, don't ever do it, but I'm somewhere in between. And for some people, it can be very helpful. And for other people, they do it long term and it can create problems. For other people, they never do it quite right and it's not going to do a whole lot for them. So the important part to think about with ketosis is that your body does not need to use insulin. So remember, insulin grabs glucose, insulin resistance, we can't open up that cell, but ketones can actually power our system, can give us energy. We can produce energy off of ketones without insulin, without that normal process that we have to go through if we're fueling our bodies on glucose. So what do we need to do then? Well, we need to make sure that our body, one, has that ability sometimes to go into ketosis. Some people, they will do intermittent fasting, and other people will do more of a ketogenic diet. So intermittent fasting is where you at least 12 hours, but for most people getting up to 16 hours of fasting is going to enable them to start burning ketones. They start not fueling their system off of glucose, and they start burning it on the ketones. The ketones are great for the brain. So for anybody that has neurological degeneration, concussions, anything where the brain is not working as well as it should and we need regeneration for that brain, using the ketosis method is a great tool for that. My wife has a book all about that, how she saved her brain after a moldy house that we lived in, all types of different things. So intermittent fasting is a great tool for that. 12 hours where you don't eat at all. So that would be from like 7 to 7 you don't eat. But for most people, 16 hours is going to be that sweet spot where they're able to get to a point where they can really manage that that intermittent fasting and that fasting state, but not going too long and stressing out their body too much. This is one of the problems with intermittent fasting is a lot of people, if they have adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue, those are our stress glands, they can't handle too long of a fast. So 16 hours is about the maximum that you want to see. Hey, John, good to see you. Is it regular fasting? So this is one of the things that we're going to be talking about here in a second, ketosis or ketosis cycling or intermittent fasting cycling. And so if somebody is doing a ketosis, if somebody is doing an intermittent fasting, you want to do that on a cyclic basis, meaning that you don't do it day in and day out. I have some patients, they've been doing ketosis for 4 or 5 months when they come in, and they're just as sick. Their blood blood work is just as bad as before they started doing that. Even if they lost 20, 30 pounds, it didn't fix what is going on. So Donna, hey, good to see you. How often should you do intermittent fasting? Well, that is a great question, and kind of like the ketosis cycling. You would definitely want to, if you're really working on getting that metabolic flexibility, at least 3 or 4 days out of the week, you would want to do the intermittent fasting. For the ketosis cycling, usually 5 days a week of being in ketosis is good, and then doing 1 or 2 days of 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrate, depending on how much exercise you do. The more exercise you do, the more carbs you can do on those cyclic days. And so you can jump out of ketosis, do some carbohydrates, and then jump back in. And so, a nice way to do that is like 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off for the ketosis. For the intermittent fasting, same thing. Some people, they'll do it all week long, and the 5 days a week at work, they do whether that's their bulletproof coffee, they do a little bit of tea. I'll put some bone broth protein in there for mine, and maintain that intermittent fasting. The big thing to watch out for is that you're not stressing out the adrenals, that blood sugar is not crashing down too much. If you know that you have low cortisol or low adrenal function, it may not be the right thing to do intermittent fasting. You may want to do more of a ketogenic diet and at least cycle through some of that, because if you're coming out of a very stressful event, if you've been really depleted, hard job, working nights, those type of things, you may not want to do intermittent fasting because of the stress that it will put on your adrenals, but you could do more of that ketogenic diet. So you could try that one out as well. But cycling through that is really going to be helpful, and it's really kind of what we would expect to see. They say, oh, that's paleo, keto, all these things. It's kind of how our ancestors ate, all that stuff. Well, here's the deal. They didn't eat nothing but fat and a little bit of protein 365 days out of the year. They would cycle off and on. This time of year, if you go up into the mountains, you can find raspberries. There's going to be raspberries out there. You're going to be able to pick raspberries, eat a whole bunch, kind of like the bears to fatten up. If humans were able to get a bunch of tomatoes that were coming out, or corn, or raspberries, whatever it is, they would eat a whole bunch of those. So it is going to be good to cycle in and out of this, and that helps create that metabolic flexibility too. Remember, the more metabolic flexibility you have, the more metabolic flexible that you are, meaning that you can handle stressors, that you can pull glucose out, that your insulin system is working, you're not insulin resistant. The healthier you're going to be, the better your immune system is going to function. The research is showing that insulin resistance and diabetes are the #1 reason why people are having such major problems with diabetes, more so than asthma or COPD, any of these other cofactors that are going on in there. So you've got to stabilize that blood sugar. You've got to get that insulin resistance figured out, and the #1 tool that you have at your disposal is your blood sugar monitor. Check out my book, Blood Sugar Doesn't Lie. We'll put a link for it down below, but we talk about in there all the different things that this elevated glucose and insulin can do. They call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Give me a thumbs up if you guys have heard that. Type 3 diabetes. If you know anybody with diabetes and they've got diabetic neuropathy, that means their nerves are being damaged from that elevated glucose. So what is happening? Well, your brain is also the largest nerve bundle in your body. So if you're damaging these nerves in your hands and feet, then you're also going to be damaging your brain. If somebody lives long enough and they have diabetes, they will get Alzheimer's. So again, for anybody jumping on, go ahead and say hi. Go ahead and put down below where you're calling in from and watching from. And if you've got any questions at all, go ahead and pop those in as well. So again, when we have insulin resistance, we're not able to get glucose into the cell, and then we're not going to be able to produce energy. So people that have insulin resistance, that have diabetes, pre-diabetes, any of these conditions, their energy is going to be low. We have almost every single patient comes in and says, I want more energy. But guess what? We can't just give you more energy. Here, take this herb, take this pill, whatever it is. We've got to fix that insulin resistance. We've got to get your body actually burning glucose and making energy, making ATP. So that's the number one thing that we do with our patients is from day one, we start tracking their blood sugar, start making sure that their blood sugar is consistent, then that glucose doesn't go up too high. Insulin, for the few cells and receptors that it needs to get into, will be able to get into. It's when those spikes come that it can't handle all of that glucose. So we know that insulin resistance and diabetes are the number one risk factors for COVID fatalities, for COVID and severe infections in there. And that's probably one of the reasons why kids have so few problems with COVID. I mean, it's almost 18 and under, it's almost zero. In England, all the people that died in England, there was only 6 kids under 18 that died, and they all had severe comorbidities. That's not saying we don't see kids with insulin resistance. We do all the time. We check every one of our patients. We check their non-fasting insulin. So if you have not tested non-fasting insulin on yourself, you've got to check it that way. You can't just check the fasting insulin, because non-fasting is real world. What, over 12-hour fast or 10-hour fast, your body might be able to stabilize that insulin. But if it doesn't, and you're in the non-fasting state, we're going to see some extremes in there that people may not even know about. So we've got to know what your non-fasting insulin is. You need to check your hemoglobin A1C, non-fasting insulin, check your triglycerides, check your GGT, one of the liver markers. Most docs don't run it, but it checks for fatty liver. You need to check uric acid, and you need to check ferritin. So those are the 6 key factors that we're looking at when we start thinking about insulin resistance, when we start thinking about metabolic unflexibility, is ferritin, triglycerides, hemoglobin A1C. Write these down. Next time you get blood work, you got to do it. Non-fasting insulin. You're going to check your glucose levels. You're going to check your uric acid and your GGT for fatty liver. We see these on even 10, 12, 15, 20-year-olds where we see insulin resistance. If you've heard of PCOS for females, PCOS is caused by insulin resistance. It's caused by this metabolic syndrome. In the medical model, they'll give people metformin. Metformin is a diabetes drug, but that is not going to fix anybody in there. Let me scroll back through here, see if anybody has any questions. Go ahead and pop any questions down below. And yeah, there we go. I think I answered all those. Go and pop any questions down below. Love answering questions. So one of the nice ways to be able to bypass this insulin resistance, and something you can do at home, is ketosis or intermittent fasting. But both of those need to have an asterisk by it and say, okay, you know what? Only do the ketosis cycling. Hemoglobin A1C, and that's different than the hemoglobin. Glucose, GGT, uric acid, triglycerides, and non-fasting insulin. So those are the ones. Thanks for writing that down there. So you want to be able to cycle through that ketosis. So if you are doing ketosis or a ketogenic diet, it's going to be, remember, a high fat diet. It's not a high protein diet. That's where a lot of people go wrong. Hey, Michelle, so metformin does not treat it, only manages the blood sugar level. Absolutely. Metformin is the number one diabetes drug out there. They use it for females that have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, things like that. But it does not fix the underlying imbalance. It does not fix the insulin resistance. It does not fix the blood sugar imbalance. All it's doing is going to try to decrease the amount of glucose in the bloodstream, and we're going to be a little bit more controlled in there, but it does nothing to fix it. Over time, if you do that for a month or 2 months or 3 months, it's not like, oh good, now I'm fixed. It has no intention of reversing diabetes. And that's the great part about doing our process, is we reverse diabetes in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Pretty amazing. But we do it all the time. I've got tons and tons of blood work I can show you on that. So it's pretty neat to see. Okay, here we go. So the ketogenic diet, the key to that is you need to cycle in and out. 3 days on, a day off is a nice way to do it, or you could do it through the week and then take off the weekend. But when you go and you do your, they call them cheat days, 100 to 150 grams of carbohydrates, depending on how much you're exercising, that doesn't mean you go eat a cinnamon roll, you go eat huge bowls of pasta, things like that. You're gonna add in some fruit, you're gonna add in some starchy vegetables, some root vegetables, some squash, some things like that. So you're not going to just go, oh, hey, let's just pig out. You're going to bump it up. But remember, an apple is upwards of 30 grams of carbs. So, it doesn't take much to get up to 100 to 150 grams of carbs in a day. So that's going to be your days off. You're going to cycle either 3 days off or 3 days on, 1 day off, or like the 5 days on, 2 days off if you're going through the ketogenic diet. And when we're talking about intermittent fasting, same thing. During the week, if you're going to work and everything, have your bulletproof coffee, have your MCT oil, have your bone broth, whatever you're doing during that fasting time, and then you're going to go into the weekend, and same thing, you're going to go ahead and eat some breakfast, but be conscious about it. And even at the important part with the intermittent fasting is it's not a low calorie diet. You're going to eat the same amount of calories you would, but it's just in that 8-hour period or that 6-hour period. So you've got to eat a little bit more frequently during that intermittent fasting. That is one of the big problems that people have when they do intermittent fasting, is they do not eat enough calories. And what ends up happening is that their body gets confused. It thinks it's in a starvation state, doesn't want to burn fat, a lot of different issues. So again, don't pig out, don't eat a lot of carbs, things like that. You still eat a nice, sensible vegetables, good quality protein, good quality fats in that 6 to 8 hour window, but you do not starve yourself. You still eat just as many calories. So if you're on a 1,500, 2,000 calorie a day diet, you're going to do that same amount of calories in that smaller window. So you just need to eat a little bit more through that process, but you don't want to starve yourself, because then the body thinks, hey, I don't need to burn off the fat. Let's just keep going through survival, basically. So that's the big thing that you want to do with the intermittent fasting. If you're coming out of a very stressful event, if you've been taking care of a sick parent and they pass away, whatever it is, intermittent fasting is probably not right for you. It does stress out the adrenals because the adrenals are stimulated to tell the liver to kick out glucose, and then also the ketones in there as well. So it may not be right for everybody. We really don't recommend it that often unless somebody just is not doing well with eating breakfast, but it is a nice tool. It is something that people can use, especially if they've had a head injury, concussions, neurological degeneration, things like that. So, all right, if you've got any other questions before I jump off, go ahead and put those down below, but hope you guys get some good information from this. Remember, we need to reverse our insulin resistance or prediabetes or diabetes. It's not just overweight people. I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were saying, you know what, they had a health issue, a health scare, and they said, I don't think it's what I eat because I'm not overweight. But guess what? It's not about whether you're overweight or not. I have some people that are overweight and their blood sugar is totally fine. We get it totally stabilized and they're doing great. Now I've got some people that are lean, that run triathlons, whatever, and they're pre-diabetic or diabetic. So it's not just about what your body weight is. You cannot tell from the outside. That's why you've got to run those blood work markers. That's why you've got to do everything that we're talking about here to get your body as healthy as feasibly possible. So this is crucial for immune system. When we talk about preventing flus, preventing COVID, preventing any of these different viruses, bacteria, anything coming down the pike, you've got to get your blood sugar stabilized. You've got to get your body to a point where it can handle anything out there. And that's metabolic flexibility, is to be able to handle any stressor out there. That's way more powerful than being safe, than wearing a mask, than social distancing, any of those things. Germs get through our masks. Germs spread more than 6 6 feet away. They might spread 50 feet away. They're going to come through the air ducts, and we're going to get germs everywhere. So we can't just try to be safe. That's not going to save us. We need to be strong. Our bodies need to be metabolically flexible. We need to be as vibrant, as vital, as much oomph as we possibly can to be able to create this state where we can handle any stressor put upon us. Hey Donna, what is the best food for breakfast? Are protein smoothies made with coconut milk and berries okay? So Donna, I would suggest checking your blood sugar after that, because we don't know if berries are going to make that blood sugar go up or not. Some people, eggs and some spinach and some avocado is really good for them. Some people, they can handle a little bit of fruit. Other people, any fruit's going to make them go up. So to be metabolically flexible, you've got to keep that blood sugar stable. So check that blood sugar after your meal, and you'll see whether that is okay or not. And again, if I am doing a smoothie, I like to do that throughout the morning. So make sure you're sipping on it. Don't just drink it all down at once. Otherwise, what will happen is it'll go like this, and then you'll start crashing down. So you want to maintain that smoothie or drink or bulletproof coffee, bone broth, anything like that. You want to take a sip, take a sip, take a sip all morning long. Does that make sense, Donna? Hope that's good. All right, any other questions out there, go ahead and pop them down below. But otherwise, if like or follow our page, if this is interesting to you at all, or anybody that you know that needs this information, we love getting the information out. Go ahead and share this with your page, share it with your friends, and we will get this cranking out there for as many people as possible. So go ahead and put any other questions down below, and tell us where you're watching in from. We love to see that. And even if you're watching this later, go ahead and put questions down. We follow these pages indefinitely, and we'll respond to any questions that you have. So, all right, guys, so great to talk to you today. And I was at a soccer game yesterday with my son and got a little excited, yelling around about the game. So that there was my voice, but. Anyways, great to see everyone, and keep in touch. Let us know if you have any questions at all. If you or a loved one needs support, we've got our Fort Collins office, our Phoenix location, and we love to help people in as many ways as possible. Okay, everybody, make it a great day. Take care.